It's terrifying, and it's exactly the opposite of what we were told leading into this administration, that it's going to be America first.
Right.
And no more unnecessary foreign wars.
Hi again, everyone. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. For the better part of the last 10 years, we've asked again and again and again and again, where is the line for anyone who's backed Donald Trump in the past, especially someone like Joe Rogan, whose support may have won him the presidency? For that matter, where's the line for Republicans? Is there any point where they'll throw up their hands and say, lie to me once, shame on you, lie to me 700 times and I'm out? Donald Trump went too far this time. We haven't seen it. That's why we keep asking the question. For so long, a lot of us, including me, have wondered if there is a line. But this afternoon, weeks into a war initiated by Donald Trump, who ran 3 times on keeping us out of wars exactly like this one, it does appear that the faintest line is starting to appear, at least for some Republicans and Trump supporters, and for the American people more broadly. It runs straight down the middle of Donald Trump's powerful political coalition, the one he just assembled in 2024. Even a pair of old Fox News colleagues. Watch.
I mean, Sean Hannity is Lindsey Graham by a different name. It's amazing to me to watch them cheerlead this. I mean, we've got 7 U.S. personnel dead. We've got a girls' school, 175 young girls dead in Iran. And there's serious dispute. We'll get into who's behind that. But there's only serious dispute because the president is now saying that it wasn't us, but his own defense secretary over his shoulder is saying it's under investigation.
The defense secretary, by the way, another former Fox News colleague. It's not just Fox News, though, and it's not just a Joe Rogan thing either. Right now, all Americans are grappling with the concern, the fear, the idea of another prolonged war. Images of deadly strikes conducted in our names as Americans, broadcast on our airwaves, is something that's starting to sink in on day 14. Most notably, in this case, the sort of slop posted by the White House's social media pages, real-world video, acts of war, life and death stuff, interspliced with clips from movies like Tropic Thunder, directed by Ben Stiller, who objected to the use of Tropic Thunder earlier this week publicly, or video games interspliced with images of war, or NFL hard hits. Speaking of which, another day, another former NFL star actively and publicly distancing himself from the use of this imagery that features him in one of these videos. Here's former Pittsburgh Steelers star Ryan Clark.
I'm disappointed that because, for one, to have Tropic Thunder and football highlights on a video about war is one of the more insensitive things that I've ever seen. There are families here in our country whose loved ones have decided to give their life to fight for our rights and our freedoms who don't see war as a sport. War doesn't deserve a highlight film. For Tropic Thunder to be a part of it, war is not a comedy. And for these people to be risking their lives, not for our safety as much as for someone else's agenda. For our regime to be as unserious, as unprofessional, as laughable, and as illegitimate as our leadership is right now is embarrassing.
Again, that's Ryan Clark, a former Pittsburgh Steelers superstar, calling the Trump administration unserious and unprofessional and laughable. That's where we start the hour with some of our most favorite friends. Puck News senior political columnist and national affairs analyst John Heilman's back with me at the table, host of Politics Nation, president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton's here. I want to show you more of what he said, because it's really important. Here's more Ryan Clark on the use of his sort of football highlights in propaganda videos for the war.
I'm not asking them, or I don't care that they take it down. I don't care how long it's up. I don't care that they didn't ask me to do it, because what I've learned about our leadership now is they don't care about what we think. They don't care about what we say. It's about what one person wants, and anything different than the thing that they're supporting is wrong, and it'll be attacked. I knew that in 16, I knew that in 20, and I knew that in 24. And what's transpired in 25 and 26 has made me feel more correct than ever. So I would never have agreed to that. I don't back this. And many of us don't believe this is a war we should be a part of.
I guess this is so important because it's clear from the outcome of the last election that voices in the political arena had only gone so far in warning about what Trump would do and what this would mean. And to now see such powerful and public dissent and pushback from some of the most respected and revered athletes feels like a new chapter.
It does feel like a new chapter and a welcomed new chapter. And not only speaking out loudly and clearly, what they're raising it to is a whole nother issue to a moral level. They're not even arguing the politics of it. They're talking about the morality. People are being killed, children in schools killed. I don't want to be identified with that. And it's embarrassing to the country, but it's also, he used terms like laughable and to ridicule them, somebody like Ryan Clark, who's a former NFL star, and to take that and say, I don't care that I'm not trying to even sue for money. I'm trying to raise the moral issue of what this country is supposed to stand for. And for him to articulate that I'm for those that went out and risked their lives for our freedoms and for us as a country. So I'm not even anti-military. I'm anti being used in this way. So you can't dismiss him as he's some anti-war nut or that he's some partisan person. Here's a star athlete saying, these people put their lives on the line. This is not a game. I played a game. This is not a game. We should not be portrayed like it is a game. And there's a moral level that this country is supposed to uphold. And I think that I don't want to be part of sanctioning any lowering of that moral standard.
Heilman, also to say, I'm not playing whack-a-mole with Donald Trump, who loves to get into little, sort of slapdowns. He says, I'm not even calling them to take it down because he's able to make the bigger point there. He doesn't care what he says. He sort of understands Trump better than some of us who've been covering him, right? He won't take it down because I said so, but I'm still going to use my platform to articulate how immoral and wrong this is. These are images of war, of people's lives, and in some instances, the moment when their lives end.
So, I mean, let's start with the fact that, the way that those images have been used is wrong and appalling. And you've heard there's been reporting over the course of the span of this still got 2-week war now that we have in Iran, where generals and retired generals have been speaking out about the fact that they are appalled by it. And so we've seen some of that's been reported. But in terms of having any kind of, broad platform, broad impact on an audience, someone like Ryan Clark has a much bigger platform than generals who are speaking on background to the New York Times or the Washington Post. I will say, to this part of this larger discussion we have all the time, Nicole, my view, which is that, the cultural realm is upstream from politics, and it's more important. The way in which people think about politics is largely not in the context of how we cover Washington, D.C. and how cable news does it and so on. I will say Ryan Clark is someone who has been very outspoken over the course of his time as an analyst. He's been, on ESPN for some number of years and has generated a fair amount of controversy. He is pretty reliably progressive. And I don't mean that to say that he's, a Democratic hack or something, because he's not. But I don't think there's going to be there's been backlashes to other things that he said in the past. That he's not someone who's going to win over some portion of the MAGA base, right? He's not someone who's going to bring across the line anybody who was ardently pro Donald Trump in 2024 and now is going to listen to Ryan Clark and say, oh well, now that I hear Ryan Clark saying this, I'm now going to switch my point of view. I think that there's an atmospheric thing that's going on when you start to see big figures in culture all come around to one point of view. And I know that's what you want to get to more broadly. But I think in his case, you've got this very interesting that in media platforms where political commentary is always controversial, you're hearing that kind of commentary, and I do think it's important. But it's got to be part of a bigger mosaic if it's going to drive the kind of defections from Trump that'll be necessary to really change the politics in the country.